to. And we're driving, I'm praying. Finally, I'm just in there, maybe a little bit further. That light hadn't come on yet. Finally, the light comes on, and, we're still, like, forever away, and we make it. It was just one of those times, it was like, I don't know if we can make it because I'm about to get out of gas. And so this last part of this message is on our path, is when we run out of gas on the path to our destination, our strength is gone. Our hope is gone. We find ourselves out in the middle of nowhere. It's desolate. And what was funny is on the way up there in the same stretch is why it should have dawned on us a little bit more. Amber had to use the restroom. And I said, there'll be something up here. And we drove and drove. There ain't nothing but cactus and tumbleweeds, which she was about ready to get out and do that. But anyway, we kept going. And so when we were coming back, is when Jeremy said, you know what? This is that same road. There ain't nothing on it. But it was too late then, Running out of gas on the path to your destination. And so the key to this message has to do with hope. And when we run out of hope is when we're going to get very disheartened in our path, when we're going to find ourselves struggling to keep going on, thinking, what's the use? We might as well stop. Almost like the children of Israel, we would have been better off just staying back in Egypt. And so to start us off with this thought, here's some university students. I think it was in Wyoming because I've seen some of their shirts and stuff. And they asked them to define what is hope.
It's a human-derived feeling or expression that states one can continue on a course of action without regard to what reality says.
I think hope is like the change everyone wants to see, and probably eagerly anticipating that change and trying to strive for that change. I think that would be hope.
Hope is the idea that something good can come out of anything that you do in life.
For me, hope is being able to overcome adversity, feeling like I'm positive enough that I can do so. That's hope for me.
Hope. I'd say hope is believing in something even though you're not sure it's going to happen. So I would say it's directly correlated with faith.
Okay.
Hope? Is believing in something that the odds aren't proven for.
Hope. To have hope. The ability to look for a brighter future. To think that things are better. If you're in a bad day, just to think that things will get better each and every second of the day.
What is hope? Wow. Yes, hope is the belief in something. I guess hope is the belief in something. It doesn't have to be good, but I guess it's just wanting something to happen, whether it's good or bad. It's just the belief that something will happen.
Now that guy tripped me out because he said, doesn't matter if it's good or bad. Well, personally, I hope you're not going around hoping for bad things, which sometimes I hope my boss trips and falls and breaks his leg kind of a deal. I don't know. That is a hope, and there's nothing really founded on it. And sometimes we might find ourselves hoping for bad things. But one of the things that I noticed is I don't know if they're so used to doing college exams that they thought they had to come up with these intricate, exquisite answers. What is hope is a pretty easy question for most people. It basically boils down to this, that it's going to be better tomorrow than it is right now. That there's something I can hold on to, that it isn't always going to be like what I'm experiencing right now. That something's going to change, and what I'm feeling now will change into something better. If I don't have money, tomorrow I'll have money. If I'm afraid today, tomorrow I'll have courage. If my relationship is being broken today, maybe tomorrow it gets mended. Hope is really a pretty simple thing. The dictionary defines hope as this: the act of looking forward with desire and reasonable confidence. You see, hope has to have the confidence that it will get better, because if we really don't believe what we're saying, we're not going to follow through and we're going to give up. I sort of think that hope is just that simple belief that tomorrow's going to be better than today. Maybe the next hour will be better. You know, have you ever had one of those mornings that, like, in the first couple of hours, there's been a lot of things go wrong, a lot of things that troubled you, a lot of things that upset you, and usually when I do that, I'll try to say, you know what? I got it all out of the way now, and everything the rest of the day is going to be smooth sailing. Everything's going to be good. That's that hope kicking in that surely it can't be like this all day long, because somewhere along that line, I might give up. I might say, I'm just going to the house. Forget them. I'm just going to the house. This ain't worth it. Proverbs 13:12 says this. Hope deferred, we've been in Proverbs this whole time, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. The term here, deferred, means to put off or drag out. If the hope that we have is put off for a long time, something, you get your hopes up and something comes along and changes everything. Oh, we're going to go do this. And then weather changes, job changes, sickness happens. All of a sudden, oh, now we can't do that. And we put it off. Or hope is drug out for a long time. And, well, just a little bit longer. Hold on a little bit longer. And it just keeps being put out there further and further in a long, drawn-out process. That hope tends to die. That hope tends to fade. What does that look like, Pastor, when hope is deferred? It might be that prayer of salvation for a loved one. I mean, my grandmother always said she prayed for my stepfather for 30 years before he ever got saved. There's some of you that are praying for children now that you've been praying for those children for a long, long time. There's some of you might be praying for a husband or a wife or a loved one that's a relative, and it seems like it's never happening, but we don't give up. We keep praying, but that's a deferred hope because it hasn't happened. But just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't happen. Faith and hope are tied together in a lot of ways. Faith has more confidence than hope does, though. Things hoped for. That's what Hebrews tells us. But here's the thing. We could be praying for that loved one and nothing changes. We might be in a job search, and we've had endless interviews, endless rejections. We look in the paper, we turn on the news, we go around places and knocking on doors, and we keep trying to find that place that will put us in their employment, but nothing ever happens. That can be hope that is deferred. It can be a person that's battling a long-term health issue, cancer, diabetes, different blood diseases. It can be a woman and a man that are desperately trying to have a child, and it's miscarriage after miscarriage. Whenever we are eagerly hoping for something important and it keeps getting postponed, the goal line gets moved a little bit further. Just when we think we're about to grasp what we wanted so bad, it's moved again. And it gets to the point that it makes our hearts sick. And literally, we can get sick. When our expectations are delayed for a long time, we can experience not just disappointment, but it leads to disillusionment. Loss of hope can even mean loss of even trying to give up on it all. In some cases, prolonged waiting for what we eagerly desire can become such an affliction that it differs little from a lingering sickness. You'll see people that they won't get up out of the house. They won't get up out of the bed. They won't eat right. They won't take care of their personal hygiene. It can get to such a point that we're so depressed and going through the motions that we don't really care anymore. This is what Solomon's talking about when he says hope that's deferred will make the heart sick. There's going to be some places you go on your path of life that will be so desolate, so stretched out between the times of joy and strength and peace and comfort, that in the middle of that place we find our hope being abandoned, our hope fading. I put this picture together. I was looking for something, and I just literally Googled a person without hope, and this girl's picture came up there. And I thought, wow, that's sort of the feeling I'm trying to express here. And so I put our verse on this side, and on this side, I had put, but I had hoped. I had hoped this was going to happen. I had hoped life would get better. I had hoped I would get the job. I had hoped my boyfriend wouldn't do this anymore. I hoped they would stop abusing me. I hope this, I hope that. And all of a sudden, the ... means it hasn't happened yet. And on Facebook today, I put about how we hope for some things, and we'll say that there's phrases we'll say, well, that's the stuff dreams are made of, or that's the impossible dream. Those are ways of saying it ain't happening. It ain't going to happen. And sometimes we will get to the point in our walk with God and walk in this life where it just seems like all the things we want, all the things we expect, all the things we wish and hope for, it just ain't happening. The heart in this passage embodies not only the mental and emotional part of us, but the whole inward person. If something makes the heart sick, it causes despair and affliction. The Good News Translation reads this verse as this: when hope is crushed, the heart is crushed. I don't know about you, but I've seen people that have, their hope got to the point where literally it was like their whole spirit was crushed. Like they were in such despair. You could talk to them, but their eyes were glazed over. There was no excitement. There was no life. It was like they didn't even care if you thought you had the answer that they needed. It wasn't speaking to them at all. Hope deferred leads to depression, anxiety, physical sickness. When we wait for a good thing for so long that desire and expectation turn into hopelessness, we eventually spiritually dry up and we become vulnerable to the enemy's attacks. I don't have to tell you that he's going to attack you the most when you're at your weakest. I mean, that's simple. It's an obvious thing, but sometimes we don't understand that. But when we find our place in that weakness, when hope is fleeting, when it seems to be gone and the light is flickering, he will be the first one in there to try to blow it out. He's going to be the first one in there. And what I wrote down, handwritten, after I type all this stuff, I go back and I reread things and I wrote down mind games. We all play these mind games when we get in hopeless situations and situations where we're struggling and we don't know what to do, we don't know where to go, and all of a sudden our mind starts thinking of all these different scenarios. Or sometimes we begin to think of all the people to blame and all the reasons why it won't work and why nothing will ever change. Matter of fact, I wrote this. We've been thinking, we are where we are, and that's not where I want to be. But there ain't nothing going to change it. You know, the alcoholic, the drug addict, the gambler, the person that has tried and tried again to find that person that would be their husband or their wife, and they fail and they fail and they fail, or they've had bad relationships or abusive relationships. People have used them. All of a sudden they'll get to a point where they say, you know what, this is just life. That's just the way it is. I'm just going to accept it. That's a person that has lost hope. They've literally run out of gas on the way to their destination. So what's going to happen? When you run out of gas, you've got two options. You either get out of the vehicle, you get your gas can, and you go looking, hoping that somewhere out there will give you gas. I run out of gas one time. This has been years ago. We lived out there where Kim and Phil live. And I'd gotten in a vehicle, and I'd forgotten to get gas, and I was going to come to town. I thought, well, I got enough gas to get to town. And I got to about I think it was just before the airport, and I run out of gas. I said, oh, shoot. So I'm sitting there, and I'm trying to figure out what to do. I pulled over the side of the road, and I could have just sat there. I could have done a lot of things, but I looked over, and there was an older gentleman out in his yard. And I seen some sheds around, some farm equipment. I said, he's got some gas. So with hope, I go out and I go walking over there, and I said, sir, I've just run out of gas. You can see my car parked right on the other side of the road across from your driveway right there. I was wondering if you might have some gas and even something I can put it in. Oh, yeah, no problem, son. And so we go walking back there, into his shed, and he gets out a gas can, and he had some gas there, and he poured it in there, and all this kind of stuff, and so I was so happy and so excited that it was like, this is my lucky day. I ended up stopping at the perfect spot, and so just saying, because he probably give me not even a gallon. It might have been a gallon of gas that he had in this container to give to me. So I'm trying to be nice, but I really thought it really wasn't no effort on his part. We walked from here to the back of this church, and he got a can, he poured some gas in there. I said, I'll pour this gas in there, and I'll bring your can right back. And so I did, and I come back, and I give it back to him. I said, do I owe you anything? Seriously thinking he'd just say, no. He said, yeah, you can pay me for the gas. I didn't have no money. I didn't have no cash. So I go back across the street, and I'm digging through the council and all this kind of stuff, and I can come up with like 77 cents. And so I go over there, and I really thought, this is so embarrassing. So I go over there and said, sir, I said, I don't have no cash on me. I just got a credit card, and I don't even have a check or anything. But I do have, I dug in my council, and I found this 77 cents. Is that okay? Yeah, I'll take it. I said, are you serious? So I give him the 77 cents, and since they've been in the council and stuff, you spill stuff in there. Some of the coins was stuck together, and all that. You're even embarrassed to use it, but he was happy as a lark to get that 77 cents for that gas. I'm sitting there thinking, I would have just said, no, go on. It's okay. Don't worry about it. But, at least I had a place to go. But when we get stuck on the road of life, it's going to seem so desolate. We're not even going to have enough hope to say, you know what? Maybe if I get up and go to church today, God will speak to my heart and reignite some passion in my life and get me to go to the next day. Or maybe I'll go over to my counter, my table, and I'll pick up my Bible and I'll begin to read. We don't even think that's going to make a difference. Hope is gone. Family try to talk to us. We might even seek counseling, but we can't find hope anywhere. A lot of people face this kind of disappointment at some time in their life. Sometimes it happens in divorces. Sometimes it happens in bankruptcy. Sometimes it happens when people lose their jobs. Sometimes we might think, you know what? I just needed a little bit more time. Maybe if I had a little bit more time, and I read this quote, it was from Vince Lombardi, one of the great coaches in football, and he was a coach of the Green Bay Packers. And one of the times when they asked him about a loss that they had, he said, you know what? We didn't lose, we just ran out of time. You see, there's some optimism there. There's actually some hope there. He was basically saying, you know what? You're lucky. The clock saved you. If we would have had a little bit more time, we would have beat you. But you see, the person that is out of hope, they also think they're out of time. And they say there's no sense in going on. We find people needing medication to help them out of these times of their life. We find people actually taking their lives sometimes when it gets to this point. Sometimes the very help they need is from friendships, whether it's family or friends or neighbors. They begin to push them away. If we could stop the clock, we might be able to reach any destination we choose, but there's no timeouts in life. The clock's always running. It's almost like the hope that we had has been put on hold. There's one thing I don't like with the telephone is being put on hold. I'll be with you in just a minute. And they start playing that music. And that's okay, because sometimes you're in a place, where, there ain't nothing else to do, so you'll listen to music. And sometimes they'll even play some decent music. What I don't like is when all of a sudden the music stops, my heart jumps. It's a person. Thank you for your patience, but all of our people are still busy serving clients. We'll be with you as soon as possible. And then the music starts again. After about 10 minutes, you're tired. Your ear's getting sore from holding the phone there. So you put it down on your desk. You put it on speakerphone so you can begin to do chores around the house while you're waiting for that elevator music sound. And you're over here, and all of a sudden, click. Oh, I better get back to the phone. Thank you for being on hold. We'll be waiting with you as soon as you can. I hate being on hold. I think sometimes they literally do forget about you. But what do we do when in life we lost hope? We're searching for God, and maybe it even seems like God has put us on hold for a while. Solomon says, hope deferred, hope put off, hope that is drug out in a long, drawn-out process, makes the heart sick. Maybe you've never been there. Maybe you've never had that loved one you were praying for so desperately and nothing changes, and they seem to be getting worse, that you begin to wonder, what's the use? Should I even keep trying to pray for them? When you realize your dream, your hope isn't happening, your heart gets sick. It's a natural reaction. We ache, we hurt. What do we do when hope is deferred and you find yourself heart sick? To be honest, you only got two choices. You either stay there and get bitter, or you get up with hope that something will change to try to get better. Now, those cliches, sometimes they sound good when they come off the tongue. Oh, you either stay there and get bitter, or you get up and get better. But that is so much harder to do than it is to say. I looked at a couple of people in the scriptures that probably wondered in these times of life, the path they were on, what was going on. A young boy, probably 16, 17 years of age, had all the dreams in the world. Literally, he had dreams of what he was going to be. And they were grandiose, and they were plans that he knew were God-inspired, to the point that he began to share them with his family, his many brothers, even his parents, to the point where they didn't like hearing these things anymore. He finds himself, instead of on the road and on the path to greatness, he finds himself almost killed, thrown into a well to be left for dead, brought back out of the well, sold into slavery, put into somebody's house as a slave and as a servant in their house, accused of rape, which he didn't do, sent to prison, helped some people out in prison, and thinks that because they said, oh, I won't forget you, Joseph, but they did, and it's almost 2 years later, he had a lot of hope that was deferred. He had a lot of hope that he knew what God's plans were, but life isn't going according to God's plan in his mind. There's going to be a lot of times when we know what God wants for us. You know, that's why it's great to quote a verse like Jeremiah 29:11, but I see so many people that even claim that verse that don't even have a right to claim it, because they ain't even living a life for God. And they try to reach out for these things. It don't work. These are for his children. But anyway, that we think that we're in the right place and stuff, and then life just gets chaotic, life gets crazy, and it's going to be easy when hope is deferred and it doesn't look like God's doing what he's supposed to do for us to get heart sick. But we know how Joseph's story ended. Another young man about the same age, he finds himself chained together with several other young Israelites his age, dragged and forced to walk and march hundreds of miles into a foreign country. Surely his heart was getting sick. Surely he thought, this is not God's plan for my life. How could this be something that would turn out good? Eventually finds himself in a pit or a den of lions. Daniel. Joseph could have got bitter with all the things that were happening, or he could try to get better and just keep trusting God. Daniel could have got bitter with all the things that were happening in his life when he was trying to do good. He was arrested for praying. But he chose to get better. King David one day got news that his newborn son was going to die. How would he deal with that? Would he allow himself to get bitter, or would he allow himself to get better? You know the story that he was moping around so much when this child was in the throes of death that when the son finally died, they were afraid to go talk to him because they thought, there's no telling what he's going to do. But the minute he finds out, he goes and he cleans up and he puts on nice clothes and just moves on with life. He realized that there was something better and he had to move on from where he was at. He could get bitter by what had happened, but he realized it was really his own fault. He was paying the price of earlier things in his life. What about Paul? Such a great man in the New Testament. He found himself with a physical disease that he just sort of called it a thorn in the flesh. We don't know what that was. There's been a lot of thought on that. We know it was some kind of thing that handicapped him. There's two theories. One was some kind of a crippling disease in his legs, possibly, that made it hard to get around. You know, they couldn't just go hire an Uber, get a taxi, catch a bus. You know, I mean, they couldn't even get on a bike. He literally had to walk almost everywhere he went, and so that could have been it. A lot of people believe it was eyesight. That it wasn't his knees or legs or hips or back, but it was an eyesight problem because of some of those scriptures where he says things later on that give credence to the fact he might have been having some poor eyesight. We don't know what Paul had, but we know it made his heart sick. Paul had had some amazing things happen to him in his life. His highs were like the highest of highs, but now he's got one of the lowest of lows. In this life, there are some great highs you're going to experience, but just because you're with Christ doesn't mean you're never going to hit none of the lows. And when we hit those lows, that's when the enemy's going to come in and he's going to hassle us and hammer us and play those mind games and try to steal the one thing that's going to get us through tomorrow, and that's our hope. Paul's got a physical ailment he's going to have to live with and deal with the rest of his life. It's probably painful. It's bothersome. It's keeping him from being the man of God he thinks he needs to be. How did Paul avoid bitterness and move towards betterness? Did he get angry with God? Did he get angry with life? Did he despair or try to make something happen anyway? You see, sometimes as a last resort, we'll just say, well, I'll just take care of it. I'll fix it. Usually our fix it doesn't work very good. We're almost like Tim the Tool Man. We make things worse. When it's all said and done, it's going to be a lot worse. But what did Paul do? We find in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 7 through 8, Paul says this: to keep me from becoming conceited because of these surpassingly great revelations, there was given me a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. Now, here's some interesting things that he's given as insight. He realized that when we hit some of these bad spots in life, it has nothing to do with God and sometimes nothing to do with our decisions. It actually happens to be because we do love God and are following after God, that sometimes a messenger from Satan is sent our way or brought our way, or they notice us and come our way. And so then in verse 8 he says, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. Paul began to pray fervently when he was facing a time in life when hope was running out. He's getting out of gas. He don't know if it's used to try to keep getting up, and every time he falls to keep getting up and going on. So he's praying to God. It doesn't get better. He prays to God. It doesn't get better. He prays to God. But after 3 times, you're going to start saying, God, okay, evidently we got a lack of communication here because you're not listening, you're not saying, you're not doing anything. But he went to the right place. He began to talk to God. He listened for God's voice. It's what we got to do when we find ourselves in these times. We got to listen for God's voice. And then in verse 9 of that chapter, we find out this, that God said this. He said, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. When we find ourselves in those times of life that we have run out of strength and we are weakness, he says, that's when I'm at my best. If you'll trust in me, if you'll keep your hope in me, this is when I'm at my best, when you're at your weakest, because then you depend on me, and I can come in and do that which I desire to do. I can be there to comfort you and carry you and lead you and guide you. Because there's going to be some times in life, no matter how righteous you are, how long you've been following God, or what's going on in your life, how close you got, that sometimes God might say to you, sorry, you're just going to have to deal with this one. If he told Paul, one of the greatest men in the New Testament, of course, outside of Jesus, I ain't going to do nothing with it. You're just going to have to deal with it. Okay, you say, well, that ain't so bad, but it's sort of like this. You know, if I go to the dentist because I got a bad toothache, and he says, well, there ain't nothing we can do. Here's a bottle of baby Orajel or something, you know. Oh, yeah, that's going to help me deal with it. But you know what it's also telling me? There's going to be times I'm going to be hurting. There's going to be times I'm going to be uncomfortable. There might be times I'm away from that baby bottle or Anbesol or whatever these different things that you might put on that kind of stuff. Unless you got a prescription, go get you Novocaine or something. You're going to have to deal with this, but I'm going to be here with you and I'll get you through it. It'll be okay if you will trust me. Then, if that's the way it is, then we need to learn to see the good in that bad situation. That no matter what we're in, God is with us, so it'll be okay as long as He's with me. Remember the song a while ago? I'm not seeking you for blessings. I just want more of you. If that's your desire, you'll always be satisfied. Romans 8:28, another verse we say a lot. We know all things work together for the good. Of course, never forget the last part. For those that love God, are called according to His purpose. I always emphasize that part. If you don't love God, don't work for you. What does love God look like, Pastor? Well, love God sort of looks like not forsaking the assembly of yourselves with others. It sort of looks like reading this word and spending time with them every day. It sort of looks like talking to Him on a daily basis. It sort of looks like giving and making sacrifices for the person you love. You know, it's a lot like the relationship you have with your boyfriend, girlfriend, your husband, your wife, your children. There's a lot of ways you show your love to them. Will you show your love? If you're not showing your love like that towards Him, then verse don't work for you too good. Called according to His purpose. God has something for everybody to do. It might not be preaching, it might not be singing, but He's got something for you to do. It may be just to witness sometimes to the person sitting in the cubicle next to you at work. It may just be to give a dose of encouragement to people you meet every day, because some of those people out there on the road of life, they have lost hope, and your bright, smiling, chipper face because you have a good relationship with God is enough to spark something in them. That might be your calling, but these are the things that this verse is talking about. But it's a way that we can begin to see good in sometimes things that are happening that are bad. Another thing I always point out is that in the original translation it says work together for the good. That means it can be a process. It can take a while. Don't necessarily mean good's going to happen tomorrow, next week, or next month. But if we keep up the hope, we keep up the faith, eventually God's going to bring this about into something that is good, something that is beautiful. Paul found a way to believe that God's grace was sufficient for him, that God's power would be even better displayed in his weakness, in his physical infirmity. This part of the path towards betterness is this. Paul went forward with what he had. What do you got? Even in your worst time, you've got something. What can you take forward? What can you move forward with? I can't see nothing. Physically, there's nothing. Materialistically, I don't see nothing. What did Paul move forward with this? When God told him this, what did he move forward with? We find this is what he says. Paul continues. Let's just, if we read it the other way of my grace is sufficient for you, my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, now it's Paul, therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness. You know what the good point is this? God just told me that in my weakness, He's at His best, He's at His strongest, so I'm going to take this weakness of mine, I'm going to start bragging about it, I'm going to start boasting about my weakness. He says, so that Christ's power may rest on me, because the more I do that, the more blessings that are come my way. Sometimes the only thing you have left in that season or that place where you've run out of gas is the voice that you have that speaks of how good God is. What do we say? God is good. All the time. So does that mean when we run out of gas? Yes. So we have to speak it, we have to feel it, we have to live like that. He said, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties, for when I am weak, then I am strong. Paul said, you know what? There ain't no good thing I can see out of this, God. I've prayed 3 times. Are you going to do anything? Sorry, Paul, I'm not going to do anything about that, but I'm going to pour in grace. I'm going to pour in comfort. I'm going to pour in peace. I'm going to pour in joy. So whenever you get feeling like this, you're going to know how close I am, and you're going to know my strength is always with you, and that's the reason you're able to get up and move from there to here. Because when you're at your weakest is when I'm at my strongest. When you feel the most lonely is when I will come in with my fullness of my presence. So Paul says, okay, that's all I need. I'm going to take that and run with it. That is my good in this bad situation. I'm going to brag about these things going on because that is my call for help. And you come in and you rescue and you minister and you meet my needs and you pour in the oil and the wine. We can use our hardship for God's glory. And when God's glory begins to be bestowed upon us, hope once again begins to rise. Whatever it was Paul had, he determined to use it for God's glory. I chose this song to play right now, and then I got to try to hurry through the rest of this. It's an old song. It is well. And I chose it because of the story, and probably everyone in here knows the story, but just real briefly, it was a man had a family. They were going to cross over to England because that's where the rest of their family was. He had business deals come up, so he wasn't able to leave. He sent his wife and his 4 children ahead. They got on the ship. They get almost, I can't remember how far out. They hit another ship, and they sunk, and nearly everybody died. A rescue boat come along. There was a few people that they were able to survive. They get to shore, and the mother was a survivor. The 4 children died. The mother sends her husband a telegram. Just like today, those things cost money, so she kept it really short. She put saved alone. And the only one that made it. It tore his heart. He was broken. But he knew he needed to get her to her, so he got on the next ship. And when they got to the point where this tragedy had taken place, the captain of that ship notified him and said, well, this is about where the ship went down. This is where your 4 children lost their lives. And this is when he penned this song. It is well with my soul. It's okay. God's got this. I don't understand it. I don't like it. I don't know how I'm going to move forward, but there's a part of me that's okay with it because I can trust him with my life and my circumstances. It wasn't an easy place. It was a place he had run out of gas, but he found out where the filling station was. His hope had to be in God. This is done by Anthem Lights. I like the way they sing their songs, and so I hope you enjoyed. It is well with my soul.
When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my life thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul, with my soul. It is well with my soul. My sin, know the bliss of this glorious thought. My sin, not in part, but the whole, is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, oh my soul. It is well with my soul, with my soul. It is well with my soul. And Lord, haste the day when my face shall be sight, and the clouds be rolled back as a scroll. The trump shall resound, and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul.
See, he had learned that the secret to it all was that his soul was saved and heaven was on the horizon. And no matter what he faced in life, he knew he had a God that loved him, had sacrificed for him, had saved his soul and created a heaven. Even though he didn't understand these things, he could say, "It is well with my soul because of everything that is around me." Our hope is deferred because we realize our dreams probably aren't going to come true, or at least not for a long, long time. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. The reality is life on earth is not heaven. Jesus said, in this world, you're going to have trouble. I don't know of anybody that's really had all their dreams fulfilled. I don't even think it would be healthy if we did. Dashed hope sicken the heart, and the higher the expectations, the greater the frustration. While getting what we desire can be a great thing, we must not allow the pursuit of that fulfillment to become a temptation to sin, to do things we shouldn't do to get us out of the situation that we're in. Waiting is really an opportunity to trust God and allow Him to work in our hearts and strengthen our character. That's our hope. He is our hope. So hope should never be deferred. Hope should never be fading. Hope should never be lost. Hope should never be gone, because He should be our hope. Romans 8:25. If we look for something we don't yet have, we must wait patiently and confidently. These long stretches in our life and the places of desolation we need to see as opportunities to turn to God and depend upon Him in our weakness. Psalm 62:5 says, "Let all that I am wait quietly before God, for my hope is in Him." Our unfulfilled desires and our deferred hopes can lead us to rich encounters with our Savior. Lamentations 3:25-26. The Lord is good to those who hope in Him, to the ones who seek Him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. The Lord is the fulfillment of our hope. So there should never be a loss of hope. When hope deferred makes your heart sick, Psalms 39:7 says this, "And so, Lord, where do I put my hope? My only hope is in you." When hope deferred makes your heart sick, look to Jesus. Hebrews 6:17-19. God also bound Himself with an oath, so that those who received the promise could be perfectly sure that He would never change His mind. What's that mean? Change His mind about you, that He would always be with you. So God has given both His promise and His oath. These two things are unchangeable because it is impossible for God to lie. Therefore, we who have fled to Him for refuge can have great confidence as we hold to the hope that lies before us. This hope is strong and trustworthy anchor for our souls. It leads us through the curtain into God's inner sanctuary. When we find ourselves on this road and hope's beginning to fade, when we find ourselves on the rough seas and we're running out of gas, we don't know what to go, how to do things, we need to trust and have an anchor for our soul, and that hope is in Him. When hope is deferred, God's promises keep hope alive. There's no telling how many missionaries, how many people of the gospel, how many pastors, that they found themselves in places just like you, just like maybe your friends. When that hope is drawn out, what do? It's these promises we run to. These promises keep hope alive because God can't lie. It's impossible for Him to lie. We just read that. Our theme verse for tonight was, "Hope deferred makes a heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life." If we are faithful to Him, God is going to be faithful to us, and the answer will come. Hope will no longer be deferred. We will receive it. Faith, as Ricky said a while ago, it does become sight. They said it in the song. When my faith becomes sight, because I've hoped, because I've trusted, because I've stayed true, and now I begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I begin to see hope coming my way. Next week, we're going to talk about the fulfillment of our hope. And so I'm using this Danny Goki song to close us out, and that's what it's called, "The Hope in Front of Me."
I've been running through rain that I thought would never end. trying to make it on faith in a struggle against the wind. I've seen the dark and the broken places, oh, but I know in my soul, no matter how bad it gets, I'll be alright. There's hope in front of me, there's a light, I still see it. There's a hand still holding me, even when I don't believe it. I might be down, but I'm not dead. There's better days still up ahead, even after all I see. There's hope in front of me, yeah. There's a place at the end of the storm you finally find.